Hi, this is Ghaleon from Pokerimaniacs, and for this evening, I I will have a hand analyzing coaching this time. So, as you probably know, I made a topic where I asked some hand histories, and basically, I would now like that for the first straddle that everyone who wants to be part of it, please say so in the Pokerimania chat in the English forums, English side. And hi for Danita and Markus and everyone else. There seem to be some questions of how to do the paste bin, so I could actually show it here. So in Hold'em Manager 2 I have this tournament tag here, and I have this tournament page here. It can be edited. Well, I don't remember where it was added, but anyway, if you have this, it shows all the tournaments. So you can select some tournament here, just select all the hands and copy paste it, and then you can add it into some notepad, for example. Or yeah, you don't even need to have, you can copy paste this straight to the paste bin actually. So let's show it so that it's clear for everyone. So the paste bin link can be found in my topic here, and you only need to paste it here and click submit. There's no need to log in with any account. Just click submit, and you then have the link here on your browser, and just copy paste this to the topic I showed earlier. And that's how simple it is. So let's then go for the randomizing thing. So Markus, Christian, Anita, and did someone else want also? And thanks for Virpa. So I think I took everyone who wanted for the first raffle. I just wanted to have this registration so that those people who does get their hand history reviewed, they would also be on the coaching. And Miss Pose. Miss Pose also. Okay. So now we have 4 names here, and just randomize. And Miss Pose seems to be the lucky one. Markus didn't win this flip. Closely in the second. So Miss Pose hand history. It is. And manual import file. Miss Pose. And then check what was the. So you have your own nick here. So this was 45 men tournament. 157 hands. Was this from the start? Yeah. Well, I did say that only checking only the final two tables for time management reasons. So well, let's quickly check where the situation would be, something like that. This is already on the. So I think here we are probably on the final table. Well, 45 men, so it has like 60,000 with more of chips. So I think this might be, well, you know, yeah, this seems around right. Well, let's start from somewhere like this. So here, Queen ten suitor is going to be a bit too weak for flatting. If this was unopened, I would say it's pretty close with the Queen 7 suited, considering the stack size. But of course, when it's opened earlier, you can't do anything. And this is another kind of interesting spot, I would say, because basically, basically, there is reason to be making minus EV solve in this situation. So let's check it quickly with the ORC. So we assume this to be not the final table, so I would be using something like, I think 80-20 is fine. Offsuit this would be pretty clear fold, but I think suited would be kind of okay. A bit outside still. Yeah, but I think this is pretty close overall. And here, of course, calling with any two with these buttons. And ace 5 off. I think in this situation we are pretty close to final table, so we can put some pressure on the other wheel lines here. And I would be, well, it's not a great situation to be shoving, but I would say it should be a close one. Yeah, so it's 0.2 if the wheel lines goes like this. And these are relatively wide ranges versus 10 PP, so in here I think shoving this would be fine. And now we are in the final table, probably. Not. Quinten suited is kind of nasty because you really don't love the idea of minrace folding. But this is actually, considering that there is only two players deep with deeper stacks, and only and most of the stacks are like on average like 5 or 6,000, so I think this can be solved actually. And I think this was $3 buy in, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 3.5. 7-9 suited, really short stack player. So we should be playing this hand because our hand has just so much equity when the player is just 3 PP and adjusted. So I think this spot would be pretty decent to try and make a stop and go. He will really rarely fold, but I would say it's still going to be better than just folding because of these pot odds. And we have hand that very often does have like 40% or so. And in here, well, versus this original shower, I'm definitely calling here. But when there's another call, I would be folding. Still going with ace king suited at least, but I think ace queen suited is a bit too weak here. Yeah. But versus this original shower, definitely taking the spot with ace queen. And pretty straightforward folds, and no point to raise. With suited ace you could perhaps open, but of course we have to call versus every one of these smaller stacks. So even if it was suited, I don't mind folding at all. And 5-6 offsuit is going to be fine shove, especially versus recreational players. Even versus Reki players, it's pretty close. And King 7 definitely shoving here. You have just 3.5 or like 4 PP. So definitely shoving here with King 7. And I would still be making any 2 shove here versus this sort of player who is likely not aware of how wide he needs to call. He had ace deuce last time. Of course he's calling with hand like that. but that doesn't mean that shoving any two would not be profitable. This is not. Was it? Was this now final table? Mm, I don't think this is final table yet. Yeah, it's not. Just had to question myself. Yeah, this is the second last table. There's still two tables left. The chips are not big enough to be final table. And King 4 off would be a goal in general if we have this sort of player. Of course, we have just 10 hands. But if we know that player is a good player, then we have to be calling. He, well, you have 1,500 chips on the beginning, 45 players, so it's over 60,000 chips in the game total, and there's not that much, or is there? Well, might actually be, I'm not sure. 20,000, 30, 40,000, 53,000. Yeah, it actually is final table. Sorry, sorry. Really sorry about that. Well, in this situation, I would be I would be shoving here because, well, then those previous shoves might have been a bit too loose because I was thinking that the situation wasn't in the final table. But in here, the point is that usually these limping players here are pretty fishy, and we are now in, well, there's 6 players, and even though there is one smaller stack, um, it's not going to be such a critical spot that we don't want to take this spot by shoving, because I think we have a decent fold equity in general versus the limpers here. And even if we get called, if it's not a trap, then we are flipping quite often. Okay, so here we want to be wide in shoving in general because small blind has decently big stack and we can put a lot of ICM pressure on him. But there's also small stack on the big blind, and considering the amount of ICM pressure we can apply to small blind, I think this is going to be profitable to shove, but it's not a great hand. We can actually look again the situation. So yeah, now we are in the final table. So any king x should be shoved with the Nash ranges, but as we can see here, small blind should be very tight. Now the question is this range realistic? And when we are talking of $3.5 game in general, I would say it's probably not. But I also think that the PP guy can be a bit tighter than this, even though he has smallest stack. So I might think that his closure of something like this small blind is probably a bit wider, perhaps like something like this. Of course, there are some. If there's like really crazy player, then we want to be avoiding making thin shoves. But if the PP is tighter than he should be, it's still fine. But in general, I would say that in these situations, at least recreational players tend to be a bit too tight. In here, we don't want to be shoving on the PP with the biggest chip lead, so definitely folding. And jacks, no point to do anything else than shoving really. If I had like, let's say kings plus here or queens plus, and there were like at least two, maybe three fizzy, let's say two really fizzy looking players, especially in the blinds, then I might prefer to min raise. But versus any one good player, it's always raises a big questions when they see that someone min raises, especially if they think that the raiser is a rookie player. So that's default. Shoving every hand you want to play is the standard. And 8-9 off, really short stack shoving. From these stats he would seem okay, but we don't have much of sample. But I would say that this is good call because he is our direct opponent who we don't want to give easy chips, and with this pot odds connected hand has a lot of value with this Jack 9 off. I like this call. But he don't need to be much. Like if he has had one PP more, I think it starts to be better to be folding. 5-4 suited. This is again situation where I would probably shove if I think that the both of these players are decent or on the tighter side in general. Eight nine off versus this sort of player, I would always be checking here. I think he can make pretty absurd calls even if he's shove, and this sort of player is not usually one that is going to be folding a ton versus small raise. But for example, versus some regulars, I might I might well, this sort of hand I think is always pretty much always best to check behind, but if we had something with less playability, I might be making like raise to 2800, 3000 if we are versus some APC Regi player. And in here, when he makes such a big bet, I'm going to fold here. Versus like minimum bet here, I think we can float, but I don't like that option with this sort of sizing from the wheel line. Yeah, it's questionable versus unknown of physics, but because he's still our direct opponent, I don't necessarily mind with those pot odds. And yeah, definitely shoving any two. We can actually check also the egg 9 that how wide wheel line has to be. It's pretty quick to check. So in NAS it's going to be actually absolute bottom. So well, we didn't have much of sample as I said, like 10 hands. But if we had like 30 hands and he had stats like he had, I think calling is totally fine. But it becomes bit questionable if we don't have that much reach. But I think most players, except some really passive ones, are going to be still on the closer of 50% here. So how bad does it get? 0.14. So it's not like absurd call either way. But yeah, if we have reason to believe that the villain is on the passive side, then folding is going to be better. And yeah, not really reason to be taking much risk here. I think in general here it's kind of tough to get better hands to fold if we bet. If he has some AX, I don't think he's folding or anything better than that. Maybe some king or queen high might fold. Of course, it's also good if we get some hand like 9-6 or some other random hand to fold. But I think here checking or betting are both okay, because also the queen high does have some showdown value. We have backdoor flush. But in general here I wouldn't be betting. It's tough to get better hand to fold. If we want to bet, I think betting flop has more of reason, because if we check the flop and villain bet turn, are we then planning to call or fold and so on. So by checking flop we give more space for the villain to bluff us. And here, if the UTG had folded any 2 shove, would be really good. Here I probably would not go as wide as 4-9 suited, but definitely something like 6-9 suited would be a shove. It's not unreasonable to shove that either, because the stack setup is really great, because they both have really even stacks, so they don't want to be colliding with us. Ace 9 we should definitely be playing here. I don't mind to shove or min raise, but definitely we should be playing here. And easy ISO shove. And for example, this sort of situation, if the big blind is Reki player, we can be shoving a lot here. Mostly because the small blind still has room to be folding, and button doesn't want to be in this stack situation. Basically, these other players both don't want to be calling if they know what they are doing. They need really premium hand, so we can be relatively wide here, but not this wide anyway. But still, if we take look of this range, that there is going to be these suited connectors, for example, any ace, and so on. So from the knowledge that hero folded ace 9 here earlier, I think is going to be way too tight here. And this is great spot again to be shoving. Yeah, it was pretty wide actually. But the point is that the ICM is not as heavy in this format than, for example, in 18 men would be. And this 5-3 suited fold is, in my opinion, I would say it's pretty horrible because we can apply so much ICM pressure. So in NAS we can sub 91%, and this is really wide calling range. And in here we can see that I was in my quite recent coaching, I was pretty surprised how wide I could be calling in quite similar spot as this one, the blind versus blind. But I would probably not be calling this wide even versus rookie player. So it might be closer of something like this, for example. At least from my earlier knowledge. So it makes any two sub really profitable. And the good side on the 5-3 suited sort of hand is that even when the villain calls with these good aces or good Broadway hands, it's totally alive hand and will have decent equity. And when we don't take these situations, it means that the villain is just going to get bigger and bigger when we are giving volts on him, and quickly we are on much tougher situations to apply pressure on him. And in general, I would say that this sort of limp folding with his stacks is pretty fishy sign. There's actually pretty much no hand that should be doing that. And this sort of situation is good to note when you are playing, that the villain here actually min raise or raise folds in this situation, especially versus the small blind, who has been pretty active on our statistics also. It might get valuable info in some later situation. This is again, I would probably bet here because I would want to protect my hand and get the pot down right away. But checking is not horrible either, it's just that exactly this situation, are we now calling or folding? Usually when we bet here on the flop, even if villain continues, it's most often by calling, and turn will go checked really often, so we at least get the river for free at that point. So we call, he bets again 2000. This is a situation that I would say in general that he probably has some 6 or 9 really often here, because in general I would think that if he had one club hand with no hits on flop, he would be betting the flop really often. And I think this can be a bluff, which is kind of why this is kind of ugly situation, because we only need to win like 20% of time or less than that actually. But I still think that in long run calling here will be unprofitable. And no reason to be fighting with that sort of stuff, especially as he has been passive. And for example now we can't be applying pressure on this guy with in this situation anymore. King 7 off. I would say that this is actually non-profitable shove in Nash at least, because now small blind can be taking has easier time to be calling with his stack, and also the BP is going that should be calling quite wide. So the Nash range would be King 10 off as bottom, and I don't think we can tighten this range a lot by any means. Maybe he folds a few more pocket pairs, but I think like this would be pretty much the bottom or the optimal situation. So if we want to look about the optimal situation from the calling ranges, this would probably be it. It will still be really marginal. Now the other question is that we have seen this guy limp folding, min range folding, so it might be that he's not going to be shoving 85%. So if the villains behind want to collide as much, then it also improves our situation. And then it would start to be on the closer. And these situations matters a lot on the how often players behind you will collide. So with these changes, it would probably be okay to solve, but not really the greatest of situations. We got lucky here. Any king here definitely shoving. Egg jack suited. Pretty close. In general, I would say that I like more shoving here than in the earlier spot with the king 7 off. But it's probably on the absolute bottom of the Nash ranges. Well, not quite jack 7 suited, but it's quite tight calling range for the small blind. So I would not say that it's a mandatory shoving situation at all. So we get into heads up. So far we have seen that he has been pretty passive. For 3 suited I would definitely be shoving here. It's practically always profitable. And I would recommend that for every player to print out the heads up Nash equilibrium charts. If you are not familiar with them, it can be quickly found by googling. It's a good guideline in general when the stacks are on the shorter side. And 7 queen shoving. And especially when we know that the villain has been passive, he's probably recreational type player, so with these shallow stacks it quickly becomes better to be shoving wider than the Nash would say, because the villain is unlikely to be calling wide enough, and when you have like 6 PP, it's a huge pot you can be taking. taking from the will line if your shove gets through. So it's not that uncommon versus these players that they just keep folding and they will dry up on the blinds. And so, for example, this hand, I think versus this guy it would be really profitable shove. Now he had Queen 6 suited. For example, if we check that hand from the chart I mentioned earlier, it's a call up to 10 PB. So it should be really standard call for him to be making anyway. So that was the first hand history. There was some situation, especially like the 5-3 suited situation, that you should be, if you don't, if you think that the wheel line is not really fizzy or maniac type, you should be shoving a lot. And those small suited connectors are going to have a lot of value in shoving hand as because even if you get called, they have decent equity. So definitely check out those hands and how valuable they are. So let's go for the next randomizing. So let's remove his post, and I think there has not been new. Well, I would anyway take these all of these hand histories before taking any new ones during the coaching. So let's go for next randomize, and it's Danita. Marcus again on the second place. So Danita hand history now. It's going to be $7 game. $135 hands. I think this was 9 men. Yeah, it was $7 9 men, I think. Actually quite close of same hand amount than from the previous, maybe a bit more actually, but I think this is probably normal speed because of so many hands. King 10 from these stats seems fizzy players on the blinds, so I don't mind open racing here. Not mandatory, but when the blinds are fizzy and at least two players behind seems to be tight from these samples, it's a decent spot. So well, can actually check that how the will line lost his big part of his stack here. So we bet with 6-7 off. So we can be after that really happy to be race calling here. And even if I had not seen how the hand went, but I see that it's a second or first hands and Villain has lost 900, so there is a tilting factor there. So definitely snap calling. And even if you had like ace 10 type of hand, I would be really hesitant to be folding because of the tilting factor. without any reads. Well, it's okay for me, but I'm not sure how does the audio side will be working. We can try it out if, or I didn't ask Miss Pose if he wanted that, but well, we can chat quite nicely anyway because there's no delay. So let's go with how we started. And Miss Pose asked what tournament this is. This is 9-man single table tournament. So first three get into money. 50, 30, 20 structure. There shouldn't be any delay, added delay at least. I did remove those from the settings before starting. Ace 2 shooter, definitely opening, though it's a bit ugly if the button shoves. And in here we have really active stats on the wheel line, so if we have this sort of read, I'm definitely not even thinking of folding. So the real question is it more profitable to be 4-betting or calling? And considering there is pretty deep stacks and we have position, I would prefer to be calling here. And this is pretty bad flop for our hand. Because if hitting queen, it's not really great for us. And so pretty much 10 is only good, really good card. Ace might be okay. But I would tend to be just folding here and not trying any sort of moves. King 10 shooter definitely calling here. King 10 off has. It's just quite much more troublesome to be playing post flop versus the UTG open. So I don't mind folding here at all. In here, if we had like, let's say pocket tens, pocket jacks or better, I would definitely be check calling on the flop with pocket sevens because it's much more vulnerable hand. I would prefer to see bet and hope he just folds. But if checking the sevens, it's definitely not with idea to be folding. And I think here both are okay. We have really often best hand. It's quite well. He might be calling some king high and such sometimes. But if I ever read that villain is really loose, aggressive type player, I think this is again decent spot to be check calling with the hand. Because then we allow him to bluff. And we have checked twice, so he might think that we are really weak. So when 8 suited, I think this has kind of two problems. Or the main problem is that this really loose player is on the position. So he's going to be flatting really often. And well, this cutoff has pretty nice shoving stack, but if no reason to be thinking he's losing 3 betting, it's not a real problem. And I would say that this is pretty nice spot to be C betting because it doesn't connect well with anything and we have some backdoors. And 6-9 off, it's not going to be in the Nash range, but this is kind of situation. If I think the wheel line is really tight, I would probably go for min raise fold or limp step if it's more like. Well, yeah, min raise folding versus the tight player. Shoving here doesn't feel that great. It's going to be probably even versus tight player. Versus tight player. It's going to be better than folding. But if he's not a tight player, then I would be open folding usually. We can check here, but I think it's a bit outside of Nash ranges. 36 hands. It's a bit annoying that you can't copy the hand information from that replayer. So it's this one. Well, it's absolute bottom of the Nash range actually. So yeah, from that it's okay. So, but not really. I don't think it's awesome situation if the villain is a good player in general. Ace 3 here, you can go for min raise or fold, and considering statistics on these wheel lines, I think I don't like min raising at all. And shoving, well, there is the antes, but it's not going to be, in general, quite strong enough hand. Or it's really borderline at best, I would assume. So yeah, if the Nash range is, it's a bit outside. It's pretty tough to say. Whatever we can we tighten the ranges? Not by much, I would say. Maybe mostly from the big blind. Few combos off, but in general here, I would be either min raise folding or open folding. He did call king queen. which is in his flatting range, bottom of the offsuit hand, so not much we can say about that, or at least that he's not folding that, so but not like I wouldn't say it's a big mistake anyway to shove there. And versus this player I would definitely 3-bet, and I would say that Pocket Tens has enough playability to go for small 3-bet here. Like, well, versus this sort of player I would use bigger sizing than versus regulars. Versus Rex I would tend to use like raise to 400, but I think versus this sort of player 480, 500 around here would be fine. Shoving is not bad either, but I just think that we can lure him so often in the pot by smaller raising that even if it sometimes brings problems, it's going to be better in the long run. But definitely if you have like queens plus here, it should be small 3-bet. Windows, well, it's okay to open as long as Billline is not defending wide. If he does, then it's really bad hand to be opening. Basically, really bad also playability. And this one is close. Suited I would definitely open, and in general if the players are on the tighter side I would be opening. Problem is this PP player who has been flatting really much because again this hand doesn't have much of playability. But I think it's still pretty close, like King 8 should be open raised. But those weaker kings, offsuit kings are fine to be folding. And that open is totally fine. I think here kind of interesting question is that if we face a 3-bet for example from this big blind, are we going to be stacking off or not? And with the small samples I would not read 3-bet statistics that much, but more on the let's make it this way, probably easier. But I would read it more on the his VPIP BFR stats, not that hand. Seems. Well, what was it? Diamond Mine. That one. So not a basic hand, but advanced hand. So with the Nash ranges, we would be opening 26%, he would 3-bet sub 36%. And it would be still a bit outside. And one of the reasons is that it's still quite close to bubble and he's a chip leader, so there's more ICM, but still quite close on the calling ranges. if we assume villain to be wide three betting. But in general, with this sort of analysis, it's not really great to be reading three bet situations directly from this, because if you think about the situation that you are 17 pp deep, no good player will be showing this range, because flatting has a lot of merit, especially on these Broadway type of, and some of these suited connectors. It's probably going to look a bit different. Like, definitely, well, all pocket pairs might be in the shoving range. Villain might be shoving all suited aces, for example. He might be shoving some of those suited connectors type of hands, suited kings, maybe those. But I would say that in general, these sort of hands would not be in good player shoving range. Maybe king queen type of hands. But these sort of mediocre hands that has lot of playability should be in the flatting ranges. Like, maybe the range would shove for shoves would be closer or something like this. Or active 3 better. So then it would be tightening a lot. But just that, if analyzing those 3 bet situations, it it's good often to be adjusting these 3 bet shoving ranges if you are versus thinking player. Here I would be pretty happy to be opening most of the time, and then off. So we got into made some weird jump about. Well, not sure what happened, but in this situation, ace 9 is kind of bad hand to be calling, because it's so often dominated by tight player. But I would say it's better to be folded in that situation, but with those pot odds, it's always going to be ugly to fold. And when you have this sort of player who likes to play a lot, there's no. You have to be kind of on the tighter side if it gets into situation that there is short stack, lot of ICM tags. Pretty loose call by the villain turn. For example, this sort of race I don't like versus this player. Of course, he had lost a big pot, so maybe he will be tighter because of shorter stack, but in here the line is really tight. But when he checks here, basically you can bet here, but it's just that how much there is real value in betting, because the line has been really tight, and When he checks, he probably doesn't have much of better hands, but I would not see that many 7x type of hands and so on. Here, definitely value betting when he checks twice. You want to value bet it's small, but it's very unlikely he would be checking ace of spade here, or maybe then probably not ten of spade either. So I would make a small value bet like 200 or so here. It's fine. And king 9 suited. Pretty standard solve overall. For example, if you had, well, he has not been 3-betting so far. But this is also a situation that if you had, like, for example, king 10, king jack suited, I might also, versus some players, min raise call to induce. And when you have such a hand, it's really good playability. So even if they flat, it's not that horrible situation. But of course, if you are in this sort of situation, min raising, it has to be min raise calling. And if this cutoff would be a good player, this is pretty nice spot to be shoving really wide. But of course, with this PP guy, it's a bit more questionable. But in general, and this is okay to be shoved. And calling here definitely. This is pretty bad. I would say shove from the villain. If you want to play here, I would definitely min raise from the cutoff, because it's simply not going to be good play. Good play to shove from cutoff with that hand in the bubble, and with pocket deuces, and with lot of stuff I would be min raising here because this PP guy has been so nitty. And this is pretty ugly flop. The real question is in this situation that does this player call so wide that it's okay to be c-betting here, because if he's calling really wide, then this king queen is not going to be hitting that often. And Christian says that deuce to shove. I really don't like shoving here that much with, or I simply don't like shoving here with such a deep stack, and especially with the PP being really tight. I think it's pretty, well, not necessarily bad play, but it's non-optimal play anyway. So I think as standard this is a checking situation, but if you have really wide calling player, it might be okay to see it. But if we can check down versus this sizing, I would be kind of crying calling. He might sometime bet with some ace high for no reason and so on, or some actual bluff. And we face a shove here. quite ugly situation with the ICM side. He has not been like total maniac on the tree betting part. Yeah, it's a normal speak. This is a sort of situation that Ace Jack I would be folding pretty happily over all Ace King I would call. Ace Queen would go more on the how I feel about the player. We can also interesting hands to check that what sort of range does the villain has to be calling or shoving to make the call good. So Ace of Heart, Queen of Diamond. This one, of course, in general you are not planning to raise fold Ace Queen, but when the stacks are so deep it becomes more questionable. And here we can actually see that the shoving range is relatively wide. But even if the range is 15%, Ace Queen off is going to be break even. And in general, I would say that this sort of range with these stack depths is not going to be happening. But he was VC player, so it's tough to say for sure. But I think it might be that he's kind of thinking that whatever I do with these sort of medium small pocket pairs and make a shoving line, he might not have maybe the biggest pocket because he would maybe want to play them. He can choose here, like maybe he has half of those, for example. I would not assume there to be this much of these sort of fans. They would be calling more often. So maybe the range might look like something like that, more likely. Then it would be Ace King call. But it's tough to say for sure because of these players. But if we think about it like in intelligent way, it's not a great spot to be shoving this deep because the risk reward is not going to be that great. It's not going to be that great. So in general, if someone is 3 betting here, he should be making smaller sizing, like to 800 or so. So I think this was better to be folded than called in most of time. 9-10 off, fine to be checking. I would probably try to stab at flop or turn because the 9-10 doesn't have that much playability. And in general, when the fizzy play type of players limp and then check, they less likely have a hand. Earlier he had the pocket sixes also and didn't fold it, so oh, I closed it. Well, quick. We had the ace queen, easy to remember. 5 suited. Yeah, fine to open. Versus more passive player on the big blind, I might also try to glimpse that, but problem with that line versus this sort of player is that you get raised quite often, so that's why I prefer raising. And you can try to double barrel here, because the king in general is going to be scare card for his range, but main problem of course here is that we have zero equity hand pretty much, so in general I'm not recommending trying to bluff these players, but if you want to be sometimes try to bluff, then I think this is decent spot for that. And again here it wouldn't be that bad spot to double barrel, because we get the double gutshot. And if the villain has some weak holding, as we saw earlier that he called with pocket sixes, so he had the flush draw 10, but if he now has something similar, this jack is again going to be scare card for it, and we have double gutshot now, so it would be a decent spot to fire again like 400 or so. When we check, we pretty much have to be just checking and hoping he has some 7 8 or something like that, because I don't think this sort of bluff is going to be good. I would much more prefer to double barrel here and give up river if the villain calls again. Because now it's a lot easier for villain to be calling again with if he has some sort of weak 10 or something like that. Well, when he got the flush draw, he would have been calling again definitely. But if he had like 7, 10 of hearts, he might be folding on the turn, maybe. And this is not such a great double barreling spot as the earlier situation. Well, I think the main point here is that if we are betting on the river because we think that he can have so many draws, we already beat decent amount of those draws with the queen high. If he has something like 9-5 of spades or some sort of straight draw on the 6 and 9, 10, we already beat those, so there's no reason to be betting against those. And if he has something like he had 10, 10 7, then he might be calling anyway. So, and it's not. I mean, even if he has a lot of draws here on the turn, it's not really that bad if he does check call again, because we do beat some of those combos anyway. But in general, I would not be planning to third barrel because we have kind of hard time to represent ace when the preflop is checked. And some thinking players might think that we are not value betting, for example, some Jack 9 or stuff like that. But range thinking doesn't really matter versus these players often in the way that they would think that what we would have. go for check call here. We do beat some total air floats. Problem is that 5 does improve part of his range. Player like this is definitely capable of having hands that connects with the 2s and 4. And the problem is that if he fires again on the river and we haven't improved, are we then folding or not? And there's not that many draws on the flop anyway, but yeah. And 9. Pocket 4s definitely shoving, even if the blinds had not gotten higher, I would be shoving. Like in the situation, if we are 20 pp deep, I would be happy to shove with any pocket or small pocket pairs. Small to medium pocket pairs, I would say. And I think this open is okay because of how tight the PP is. So even if the small blind likes to call, he's probably not going to call too much. They both call. Uh, I don't think there is any reason to be raising here. So, but folding versus this sizing is a bit weak also. So I would personally flat here. Probably we have backdoor flush draw, open-ended straight draw. Of course, the ugly part is that if villain continues to bet on turn and we haven't improved, we have to fold. But still, with this price, I would say that flatting is better than folding. Well, the villain has been pretty tight and passive so far. So, for example, if we look at the stats, we have here 70 hands, VPIP of 17, brief of price 7, no aggression factor or aggression really post flop. So when he bleeds there, I think he really often has something he's not giving up. So that's why I'm definitely not shoving. And in general, I would say that his donk bet stats main problem is that it's going to take a long time to get sample on those. And these sort of crappy hands just open fold. My opinion. He has not been a guy who folds a lot on the c-bets. Yeah, he can. We saw earlier that he did bet the king 4. He might have some for his betting, maybe folding. But the ugly thing here is that if he has queen, he's definitely not folding, and our hand has no equity. So I'm not really fan of making these sort of plays. Just give up pre-flop and go for more value-heavy range, and don't go for. In my opinion, these sort of plays are not going to be great in long run. And ace 9. Folding is going to be best. Though he probably has capped range here, but with the ICM it's not really great situation. Now the main question is I'm totally fine with the flop line, the pre-flop line. In here is that is it better to be check calling here and checking the river, or is it better to raise? There is good amount of draws, so that's why I think raising would not be bad at all. What is capped range? It means that, for example, in here I made capped range by removing some of the most premium hands from villain range. It means that when the player is doing some sort of, for example, open shoving like 15 BP, he's probably not doing it with aces. So, because min raising, for example, would probably be more profitable. Or if he shoves like 30 BP here, he's probably not doing it with the most premium hands, because you would think that he might want to play a bit slower with them. So it's more often with some sort of hand villain is unsure of how to play, for example, these sort of smaller pocket pairs or some aces, so on. Or, for example, in post-flop cap range might mean that when the villain doesn't see bet draw with board, he is less likely to have like set or two pairs or straight or so on. So I think raising here is totally fine. Good side of check calling is that he might try to bluff third time, but we have no info on that and the board is really drawy, so I like that check raise. And villain can give action with weaker made hands as well. Again, this sort of hand I would be just folding versus this player. Well played. Again, we can go for check call here, or I think it's fine as well. But when we are betting, in general, we should not be check folding ton of turns, but this is one of the worst ones because we have much less equity now. Ace of hearts or king of hearts are not great. It connects some of the straight draws. So this is one of the worst turn cards, but in my opinion there is not much sense to be bluffing by raising here. If we think that he is totally out of line, then check calling I would see as better option. And definitely check calling here as well. And he had one of the busted draws. We can see that he's pretty happy to be floating a ton of flop C bets, so have to fight against that. And yeah, blinds got up, so shoving is fine. Snap calling here. I would say that at bottom versus this guy, well, I would say that most aces are actually going to be nice calls, because I think he can be even too wide in that spot. and quite a few of the quite a few of the better Broadway and so here we have empty sideboard, so no reason to be betting, and in general I would be folding here, and even versus him I would be folding because of his sizing. He has been using small bets earlier, so I think this is more often something stronger. But we now hit the really great hand for us, and when the villain takes the turn, then definitely betting. Sizing wise, I don't want to shove here, but I would go for something like 800 or so. And he shoves. Basically, he's repping now that he has a full house, but I don't think folding here is ever good option versus this guy. So calling, but in general, he should only have he should only be beating a bluff, and he might have same strength he's kind of overplaying. And he had the full house, but my assume was pretty good here that he did have strong hand here on the flop. And in general, of course, in this situation, you should give much of respect to bet on the empty sideboard, but bit less versus this guy. But this sizing would have made me to fold the hand. Queen 10. Well, min raising is the standard. Not folding versus I would be flatting here. Here definitely. Villain 3 bets. He hasn't been 3 betting earlier that much. Checking here. I think it's just best to be checking behind. And in general, this turn card is not going to be that great. So I think we have tough time to get ACs to AX to fold here. But if betting the turn, then shoving the river might be reasonable. Mostly to try and get the AX type of hands to fold, and maybe some small pockets if he 3-bets those like that for some reason. But I'm not totally surprised if he does turn some A high here. Well, he had King Jack. Probably he would have folded that if not hitting the river, but when we see that he doesn't fold in turn with the King Jack, then the turn bet is going to be pretty questionable, even if the plan is to shove the river. And yeah, I think the bet sizing with this guy that he earlier bet really small with those marginal holdings, it makes his big sizing even more strong in long run. So that was pretty interesting hand history. Lot of situations. We can take at least one, maybe even both of the remaining ones. So we have Marcus and Christian left. Does Marcus become again second? Congratulations! Sorry for the sarcasm, or however it's pronounced. So Christian got the pot this time. So we using what name? Canue Ost. Where I didn't import it yet, so might work help a bit. So replay all hands, and this was $3.5 nine men, I would assume. Probably turbo as there was less than 100 hands. Definitely raising here, and I would raise a lot of stuff and limp a lot here. We have absolute position, so and most likely weak players, and sizing is good. Two callers. Um, well, we are definitely not folding here, so the question is it better to just call here or raise? And oh, 18 man turbo. Yeah, you said that it was 18 men earlier. So yeah, I think I like flatting here more than raising in general, even if we keep the other player also in the pot, but we have backdoor, flush draw, and two overcards. I think it was well played overall. Maybe he had folded this week of hand, but I quite often see that if the player has some sort of, well, mine he's never folding to raise, and I often see that these smallest pairs will call also these situations. I think the thinking for these players is often that they try to get the cheap turn, but are reluctant to fold the hand even when facing the aggression. But for example, if we had flush draw on the flop, then I'm definitely raising, as we get more value than often if we do hit. Pocket sevens, good raise, win 3 betting, pretty much. Very few hands you should be folding here, and from this position opening range probably not a single hand. And we hit the nuts. It's okay to check here, pretty dry flop. Definitely raising here. Sizing wise, I would go to something around 300, bit over 300. That is fine. And now when we get one caller, we get pretty nice stack to pot ratio for the turn shove. And well played. Well played hand. King 3 suited is fine to fold. If you had something like, let's say, King 8 suited, I would tend to be limping or ISO raising. And if there was no shove, then definitely calling here. PP is too deep to really make shove that great of play, and I don't want to be making small raise with hand like this. When the shove comes, then we have to be giving up. Not lot of open race situation with this limper, but in general this sort of limper it's still going to be a nice spot to play wide range, but of course not that crappy hand. Pocket 5s is going to be good shove here, especially with the big antis. And his call is the loser side, but not unreasonable here. So now we are in the final table. And really nice flop. We want to be checking here and give him opportunity to bet himself. There is of course decent amount of draws he might be calling here, but and he has been passive, so him being passive might be a reason to lead here, but when it's this still this dry flop, I would really prefer to be checking and giving him more rope to commit chips himself or hit something. But when we do lead, then definitely continue betting. And considering the stack size, it's probably best to be shoving. Because these VC players I often see making really bad calls with draws that they might be snap calling if they have like 7-8 or some flush draw without any help, like some 9-10 suited sort of hand. Yeah, if we have a read that he stays on the pot with lot of overcards and is passive, then of course leading is better play. But then if we assume that he just folds, for example, some queen 10 type of hands, then we are just getting a huge fold equity with our donk bet. Or it's not donk bet, it's a lead. Lead in the limp pot. Here definitely shoving versus anyone, and problem with, yeah, thanks for the mispose to be here. Problem with min raising here is that we really don't want to be min raise folding hand like this because it has really good equity, and these sort of players are the type that might be capable of making re-steals when we look about these statistics. I probably have stats from this Libormar from my database because he has so many hands. Now, I would make small c-bet here in general, but it's just nasty if he then checks shoves. Around 800 is okay sizing. Well, yeah, but still Jack 9 suited. Yeah, well, there is reason to be min raising if we assume that they are really passive on the passive side and mostly just flatting or folding. Then it's fine to min raise. But in general, if I see like this Libormar Will line who is with these VPI PPF, or I would assume that he's For example, not having much, if any, flatting range in this situation. So it's going to be either shove or fold, and if we min raise here, he might be shoving. For example, small pockets, he would be snap folding to shove, or some suited aces, he would be folding to shove. So as default, I would say that shoving here is the best play. But if we have a reason to believe they are not 3-betting, then it becomes closer. And his sky limps again. I would not be that scared of his limp, but when we get raised, then it's easy fold. But if there was no raise, I would be shoving here. We only have deeper stacks versus this one guy who is wreck, and on this situation he's, or I would assume he's a wreck from these stats, and he should be on the tight range versus our shove. Quite funny that he folds himself on the post flop. King Jack here versus good player. This would be call, but it becomes closer with the less reach we have. It's good spot to check this sort of hand because it shouldn't really be like snap fold situation. At least if we have a reason to believe that villain can be on the wider range. But let's see what the totem resources says. So it was this Chao guy. So with the Nash of FGS1 ranges, it will be just barely outside of the flatting range. Just out of curiosity, if we choose FGS2, how does the ranges would take that? Would still be a bit outside of the calling range. So better to fold as general, but on the top of our folding range, so to say. And this is quite close because if we had like 1 pp, 1 pp lower stack, this would quite quickly start to be calling hand. Ace 4, easy shove. Pretty interesting call. That should not be a call, at least. But let's not use time for that. It's just that if he was a regular and you see him constantly making questionable calls, then it's good thing to note. This is actually quite close because these two guys with the 3000 stacks should be really tight. And even if the PP calls relatively wide, we have, or should be calling relatively wide, we have pretty decent hand. So let's filter Jack 8 suited. Did you shove here or you folded? But the only reason why this is not a snap shove is the small stack on the PP. That we should have really little fold equity, but I'm just good even if he calls. Yeah, I had no. Even if he calls with the good range, is it still going to be? Yeah, it's pretty clear shove still, even if he calls like 50%. And of course, are these players this tight? Maybe not. If we widen their ranges, how does it then look? Still looks good. So we should be shoving this hand. And also a good reason is that I would say that quite many are not calling wide enough on the PP, so this player seems wrecky again. King 4. I would be shoving here because, well, I might not be shoving if this bigger stack, if I know that he is fishy sort of player, unpredictable player. But again, situation where we can, and the small blind guy might be the sort that he's folding huge amount of hands compared to what he should be calling. But of course, these situations are always more risky if the medium stacks are not aware of the format. So I'm not certain if this sort of ranges really makes sense in small stake games because these ranges are going to be really tight. And Christian says that the king 4 was shoved because of the short stack. I would actually assume that it's better if he's a bit deeper. Let's say that he has 2000. I would assume that our Nash range would widen close to any two. Well, not quite, but 70%. So it would help us because then we get a lot more folds from him with the Nash ranges at least. Even if the medium stacks are assumed to call a bit wider. But like in here, I don't really think that even in the high stakes, I would say that button in this pot is likely to call a bit wider than kings, like queens, maybe sometimes jacks, even if it's quite unprofitable. But just that in these situations, if we have a reason to believe that the medium stacks can be tight, then we can be on the really wide ranges. Pretty funny that then he plays deuce 5 off. Well, yeah, this is okay to be folded. Min raising, well, we have to call the small blind. I would probably open fold usually in that situation. And here, as default, I would be shoving. And this is kind of tricky situation to be defending white because there is quite a lot of ICM side, and 10-7 is not going to be playing that awesomely. But if we do defend, then we should be check calling here. This makes no sense, absolutely no sense. You want to be checking here. Give him the rope to bluff if he wants so. If you shove here, he's always going to call with better hand. And if he has weaker hand, he might be calling sometimes, but most of those will be folding, so donk shoving the turn makes zero sense here. And if I defend pre-flop, I would be check calling, and if check and on the turn, and if he shoves, I would be calling because he can be applying the ICM pressure. But donk shoving is pretty much the worst option. Something weird happening again. This replayer seems to have some bugs. It just jumps through some hands or something. What was this one? No idea why it makes such jumps. And here shoving is okay, he might be folding something still. Well, situation wise this versus active, but not like good regular. I think this is okay move. But versus thinking player, there is the problem that villain is going to be shoving decent amount or good amount of the hands he want to play here, and his min-raising range is going to be really polarized, so that he has some sort of crappy hands. Bottom of his range, he's planning to probably raise fold versus both bigger stacks, even the PP, and then some premium he's inducing you to shove here, so this is okay move, okay spot, but just have to be careful on what villain you are making this play, and some players might be unaware of the ICM side, so that they might be raise calling some ace jack or something like that. But with good reads, it's reasonable, even with the crappy hands. Well, if the Christian saying that he has to fold a ton, but it doesn't work that way with every player. If he's playing optimal way after min raising, he has to fold a ton, but if he's not playing optimal play, he might be calling way too wide. So that's why I said that good reads are mandatory for such a place to be good in long run. It's pretty much same as, for example, you are in some of the bubble situation, you shove any two, and you say that he has to fold a ton, and then he makes some absurd call with ace 5. You can't really just say that, well, he made a bad play, but it's also that you made a bad play uh, because you probably didn't have a reason to believe that, or at least if you have some reason to believe that he could make absurd calls, then it's also bad play by your part. Well, the inducing range in that situation like ace king suited should never be inducing hand pretty much in that situation. I think it at widest it's something like queens plus probably. I think even jacks would be too wide with the ICM side because you have to the raise call induce have to be more profitable than the open shove for it to be really a good play. And I like this shove. Like here, villain should be on something like 7% or so. Calling range, something like that. Maybe even a bit tighter. But yeah, he had a premium hand. In here, I would be shoving. We only have to, like, if we don't have a reason that this small blind might be making some, or both blinds are making loose calls, then I would like to shove here. We can apply a lot of ICM pressure on these other stacks. Even if the small blind covers you, if he calls, he only has 2000 more, so he can't really do much. And pretty nice outcome. Into the heads up, easy shove. Small pockets, small aces are pretty great to be shoving here. Some, like suited kings and so on, are fine to be open shoving. We can actually also check the situation if Danita wants that. What is the exact range? But it's something around here, queens plus, kings plus. And yeah, this is okay to min raise, but if you think that the villain is aggressive, or we have a reason, I think he was 3-betting quite a decent amount earlier, so from the small sample though, but if we have a read that villain is 3-betting, 3-bet happy, then we should not be min raising this hand, but limp or open shove. And it's going to be good open shove in general because the hand is quite decent, and I'm definitely much more happy to open shove versus aggressive opponent than min raise folding. But limping is also good option. And definitely betting the 800. Mm, this would be a good spot in my opinion to lead here. We have double gutshot and we have some showdown value with the queen, but not necessarily that much. So I would tend to lead here. And if you check and he bet small here, you definitely should be calling. But now no reason to be betting, just check. Check and win decent amount of time. And good shove. I pretty much like these sort of heads ups. And he picks perfect timing. So that was pretty well played overall. But for example, in that bubble situation with defending 10-7 suited, I would not usually be making such defense because of the ICM side. but I think it's more of folding or shoving if we have a good read on the opponent, but I don't think that flatting is really going to be that great. And do we take the Marcus? Well, let's remove Christian, so maybe now Marcus will win if it accepts. Oh, it has to be 2 items. Well, let's check also the Marcus. Just for forehand histories, so for those who were active enough to send those, let's reward everyone. Well, even if you have like 1,000 or 2,000 or something like that bigger stack, it doesn't really matter because Villain understands that you can't apply that much pressure because risking your stack is going to be really really bad also, or risky. Well, yeah. So Marcus, do we have Nightfish 666? Hmm. Didn't I import? Probably not. No, I did. Yeah, it's not from this month. Well, let's make quick analyzing, so not stopping for all the situations that much. Why in? Well, tough to say, tough to say. Marcus probably knows that himself. This is from some MTT, it seems, from the 3 million stack size. Now it once again jumped. Alright, yeah, I clicked on the wrong hand. The heck? This is just weird. These are on the some weird order, yeah, it's not in the time order. Maybe now we have better luck. Oh yeah, seems like we have to be calling the pocket checks. And calling pretty much anyone in general. Maybe if he's something like 30/5 or something, we can be folding, but anyone half decent we should be Should be snap calling. Not sure if this is final table or probably not, but in here I would be, if I open pre-flop, I would be c-betting here because of course it's kind of turning the hand into bluff, but if we are checking, it's just so tough to be check calling. Double barreling here, we might get some 7x to fold. Top pairs are not folding, maybe some 10-9s, or if, well, I think this is pretty questionable to double barrel. If it was like 3 of hearts, I would actually check call. If I would probably check call 10, but yeah, I think, well, might be okay, but pretty thin anyway. Yeah, 8 is not folding. Pocket fives. Main question in this spot that do we want to be open raising tends to be that do we call these if they are aggressive. BP seems on the passive side, but this is not, in my opinion, great situation to be opening if we are planning to be folding and if they are aggressive. And I think it's quite marginal to be raise calling. So possible open, but has to think a bit about how to play the hand or what to do if something happens. Yeah, versus good players I would not be opening this wide, but fine with the reads and no reason to be making moves with in that spot. Ace 3 suited. I think it's better to be flatting or shoving compared to folding versus active player. And personally, I would like to be shoving here. These suited small aces are pretty nice as re-stealing hands with these sort of stack depths. Because flatting, the main problem is just that the hand doesn't have that much post to play ability for. So, for example, in this situation, I think folding is going to be best. 5-7 limp. I'm not sure what situation was it. Ah, you limped here. Yeah, I thought that you min raised. I don't really see point in that because usually if you limp, you want to be limping hands that has good playability, but which you don't want to face. For example, 3-bet shove from this guy here. So the hand might be something like, let's say, Jack 9 suited, for example, or some maybe even Jack 9 off. But 5-7 off, I don't see any real reason to be limping. Just open fold or min raise if the players are tight enough. I think this is again situation that if you don't face a shove here, it might be a reasonable spot to be 3-bet shoving here if this open raiser is active, because when this sort of 50 VPIP fellow calls here, I think he's going to be folding pretty often in this situation. But if the open raiser is on the tighter side, then folding is going to be better. 5-3 suited shove. If this is a final table, and yeah. The problem here is that these players behind are the smallest ones in the game with you, so they have the most reason to be calling you, basically. And I doubt this sort of shove would be profitable versus most players. But we can check it out. It can be on the close side though, with the suited connector type of hand. So I'm not sure what sort of price structure I should be using. I think 180 men could be quite close, or what does the Marcus say if it's close to what these normal MTTs are on the final table. But let's go with this. I think something like 7-6 suited is going to be shove, but not sure if 5-3 is. It's in the Nash range with these assumptions, but on the break even. So if the players are tighter than this, then it's going to be a bit better. So yeah, seems decent, but not something that should be done necessarily that likely to shove here, because like from these small stats I have, well, at least this small blind seems to be a good player from these VPRP PFR, but of course 50 hands doesn't really tell much. This queen, yeah, there is some ICM concerns, but I think it's still going to be so top heavy that we want to be shoving here if the player is not really tight on the tighter side. But if I shove here, it's pretty much the bottom of my range. And here, if he had min raised, we could argue that maybe defending would be okay, but when he 2.5x's, there's really no reason to be defending. Yeah, and definitely shoving here. Might be even any 2-spot versus non-rec player at least. And exit suited I would not be fooling around with the chip leader. And I like min racing. And this sort of shove from the player makes no sense really. He shouldn't have fault equity really, and he's shoving versus UTC and have fault table behind, so even hand like, let's say, king queen suited would be fault here. In my opinion, you are not like huge chip stack that would be abusing the situation, most likely. And here only ugly part is his pre-flop sizing, but from big blind king queen I would still be defending, I think, if he's not passive earlier. It's just such a great hand. So even if the pot odds are a bit weaker, it's a bit too good of hand to be folding. If I would see this sort of raise in this situation from a reg, I would assume that his range is like queens plus or so. But versus non-reg player, it's of course not so such a clear sign. And of course, when I said that about this Razer who raised small, if his stack was a lot deeper, then it becomes totally different situation. But when he had such a short stack, if he was a wreck, then it would be really scary looking line. King 8 off doesn't seem necessarily that well. He has been 3-betting a decent amount, but I might open here because he seems like type that will call more often. But it's pretty perfect situation for him to be abusing by 3-betting a lot. And in here I would just be checking. No reason to be betting really. But now it's fine to be betting. Did it jump again? Well, anyway, let's go with the hands. Got into heads up. Ace 3 off. It's fine to be shoving, but min raising is more of standard play. Fine to be opening in general with every hand, though he had been pretty active earlier, so it might be reason to fold the absolute garbage. And personally, I would tend to be just check folding these sort of situations. because one of the problem is that it's tough for you to represent much here, but of course versus Fizzy player it might not be big problem. Like this sort of hands I would probably fold from what I had seen from his statistics earlier. And yeah, blind got up, so pretty standard 3-bet shove. And this would obviously be give up flop. Zero reason to be c-betting. I don't like this shove at all because you have hand that has really great postal playability. So why you don't want to be giving him as much possibility to play as possible, basically. So I would be min raising here. If he shoves, then snap call. If he calls, great, you have great hand from position. Shoving will just lose value a lot if he's not a player who calls absurdly wide. Mm, yeah, I would be calling here. We have somewhat of kicker problem here. If I had like queen 10, I would probably raise here. And call. When he checks, it's pretty hard to get value. But does he have often enough? He might be check calling some of the better queens, I think, with the jack coming and backdoor flush coming, so I think checking here is going to be better than value betting. If betting you want to make it with small sizing, so that if he has some like sort of deuce or whatever ace high or something, he can be calling. Pretty surprising he has a jack here. But if I had good, let's say that we had queen 10, I would be definitely betting here for value. And here I would just check. Problem with this race is that I don't think this player is going to be limp folding that much. So we are just building up the pot out of position with hand that has bad post-flop playability, pretty much. Of course, it's not a problem when we flop a straight. So betting something like 700,000 or so, I would be my line. It's still pretty drawy, and if he does have, let's say 5 or 4, he's definitely calling the bigger sizing as well. Well, this seems pretty nice for us. Yeah, great player. But we see that he limp calls with 3 deuce, so of course when we have ace 3 it's pretty nice, but in general it means that we don't have pre-flop fold equity and we don't want to really build pot with hand like this. For example, if you had like, let's say 10-8 off, I would be more happy to raise because it it practically has more postal playability than ace 3 has. In here I would be open shoving because yeah, I would be open shoving usually here. It's always going to be clearly profitable and you don't really want him to flat. Easy call here. This is sort of situation where I think donk betting would be reasonable. I think hand is, well, it's pretty borderline. Can we check call here really? But I think donking here would be reasonable. Mm, yeah, I would be just check folding here because when he checks here, he has, well, he doesn't have flush much at all. Sometimes, but not usually. But he, in general, I think AX will be will be decent part of his range here because I think he has not been min raising huge amount. He has been limping quite often, and he will be he can be checking behind the flop with AX a lot. Yeah, in the heads up, the trash aces they are hands that can be often open shoved pretty deep. They can be 3-bet shoved, especially versus active open raiser with deep stacks, like let's say 15 pp. It's often pretty clear shove. Closer to 20 pp, you might want to be flatting more of those, but it's usually not a hand you want to be 3-betting small or like raising versus the limp small. And 5 king, it's fine to flat. And this player has not been c-betting and raising that much, so I would be just giving up here. And then queen. Yeah, it's fine to check. It's fine to c-bet in my opinion. Not quite connected enough to be just to make checking clear decision, and we can get quite a lot of equity to fold. And here definitely making like 400,000 c-bet or something like that. When he calls, I would just give up. It's tough to get Jack X to fold, and Ace never give ups. And for example, in here we are pretty deep. Villain is not being one that win races huge amounts, so definitely just flatting. And I would usually be check calling if he see bets. I don't see reason to be betting here really. Just check call. But I think, well, he has been passive, but I think in general I would like to be calling here still. And this is pretty much like worst possible turn card to be barreling ever. In here, considering how passive he has been playing on flop, I think leading would be best option. Again, card you don't want to see, so I would check fold most likely. Pretty nasty even versus this min bet. Because it make little sense that if he has, for example, some Jack 8 that he would be betting. In my mind, so And now we have to be folding. In general, this is not bad leading spot, because check calling has the problem that it's hard to know where we are, and basically fold deck is bad. Almost full deck is not good for us. And when he 3-bets so small, you kind of have to defend. And I would definitely check here. When he checks again, I think we can value bet like 1 million here. And I think this line looks pretty weird, because when he 3-bets, I would assume that his range is more toward some Broadway hands and so on. So even if he pot bets it here, I would have pretty hard time to be folding. Of course, he can have some ace. Well, it's questionable if he would be betting like that. If he has a deuce, maybe some ace 7, pocket 7s, maybe. But seems pretty fishy line. And definitely betting here. And in general, I would bet big in this spot, because hard draws have missed, straight draws have missed. So there's a lot of hands that you could be bluffing here. So in general, I would be using like at least 1.6 million sizing. And I don't think checking is that great. Well, he might now value bet like Jack X, and then we can check raise and maybe get him to hero call, but in general I think this is pretty good spot to be leading. But now he bets, so we have pretty easy shoving situation. He should pretty much, well, he can have some full houses sometimes, but should be pretty rare. And I would personally use a shove here, because I think the calling frequency versus this and shove should be really close to each other. Yeah, work great this time. But in general, in this situation, I think you can get called by, let's say, ace high type of hands pretty easily, at least versus thinking player. Deuce 8. I think it's okay, it's suited still. Yeah, for the wheel line to take that line with king 10, I think it's not really a good line, because 4x is going to be a really small part of the hero's range. This is pretty pretty questionable to defend deuce 3 off. And in general, I think this player has not been raised so much, so I think he will be hitting this flop decent amount. But this pre-flop defend really make no sense. And in here, he has been 3-bet shoving, so I would be bet calling here. I think what is, yeah, I would be bet calling if he decides to check so. When he raises small, I would tend to just call here and basically call every turn. Folding here is, in my mind, pretty bad play because it's just so unlikely he has a speed here. He doesn't shove pre-flop, so he probably doesn't have much of aces, if any. Of course, he might have some unlikely deuce 4 type 3-5, but it's just like pocket 5s, pocket 3s, AX, those should all be shoving pre-flop most of the time. And he has not been a player who just calls all the time, so I would think of this hand as pretty close of nuts here. In kind of a way that we are really often with the best hand here. And if he has like king 5 type of hand, would he be check raising when you can still easily have the ace? So looks like a bluff or semi-bluff, good amount of time. And easy call. And huge setup in the end. So that was close to 3 hour session this time, and well, thanks for the 4 people to sending the hand histories. I would have been expected to see a bit more of those people interested about getting the hand histories analyzed, but this time it went like this. So thanks for commenting, thanks for following. Let's see on the Thursday on the Finnish side at least. Bye.